Well, good afternoon if you are in New York City or somewhere in the East Coast of the United States or in South America. Good morning if you're further west from here. Good evening if you are in Berlin, as my guest is today, along with my wonderful engineer, Johan. And as always, good evening, peaceful evening to our loved ones in Ukraine. I'm Fred Plotkin. This is Fred Plotkin on Fridays on IDAGIO, the place where classical music happens. As you know, IDAGIO is a video and audio streaming platform dedicated to supporting artists and to making classical music and opera available to fans around the world. If you follow such things, today being the 1st of April, in Italian it's called Pesci d'Aprile, April Fool's Day. As it happened, I was in Berlin 4 years ago and wrote an article about the discovery of a lost Verdi opera that they found in the garbage outside the opera in Berlin. This article went all over the world and people took me seriously. So I'm going to speak seriously today.
Stavo pensando, I was thinking about it. Never heard about it.
I'll send you the article. My guest today is the wonderful Italian soprano Barbara Frittoli, who is in Berlin. And I need to tell two things to listeners up front. Number one is there have been connection issues in Berlin today. So if for whatever reason we are cut off, we may have to restart. We hope not, but I want you all to stay with us. And number two, when I hold these Friday conversations, usually it's with people who are colleagues, who are people who I know, or if I don't know them, I admire them. But there is some sense of detachment and objectivity. I cannot be objective about Barbara Frittoli. I love Barbara Frittoli. And therefore, this will be a very different kind of conversation, perhaps, in that we are old friends and we're very good friends and we don't see each other as often as we'd like to.
No.
But, Barbara, before we became friends, I knew that she was one of the great sopranos in the opera world, an Italian soprano, a very special artist. But to tell the truth, not everybody that you love at the stage, from the stage, turns out to be a person you love off the stage. But in this particular case, Barbara and I are close friends. So it's wonderful to see you. Why are you in Berlin?
Oh, I'm singing at the Staatsoper unter den Linden. I'm doing Così tutte. Sorry. I'm a little tired. I was thinking, well, what I'm singing. So I'm only a soprano, you know.
You're doing
the mind
is... You're doing Fiordiligi.
No, I'm not doing Fiordiligi because I'm doing the Spina, and I explain you why.
Yes.
Because this is a special project that Daniel Barenboim decided to do, that he wants 4 young people, of course, young singers, to do the lovers, because I can be their granny now. So this is, and he asked before to Barcelona, to Daniela Barcelona, to do the Spina. It was too high for her. She said, no, it's not, I cannot sing it. And then he asked me, and at the beginning we have Ferruccio Furlanetto doing Alfonso.
Mm-hmm. And we did it in San Francisco, yeah.
Yeah, and we did some rehearsal, and then everything was stopped by the COVID, you know. So now we are doing these performances, but Ferruccio canceled. So we have Lucio Gallo doing the performances with me. And so we are having a lot of fun. It's the first time for me and for him.
Well, it's an interesting approach. It's not the first time. James Levine at the Met did that some 20 plus years ago, when we had 4 younger artists in the roles of the lovers, and the older people were Helen Donat was Despina and Thomas Allen was Don Alfonso. And Helen Donat as Despina was about 65 then. You are nowhere near 65.
No, thank God. a little less.
Yes. And therefore, she played it as a woman of experience. And I find it very interesting because when I've seen young women play Despina, they're full of spirit, but also they are women who don't have the social advantages that the two sisters do, that Fiordalicia and Dorabella have. She is a bit of a servant, whereas when Despina is older, she can be the wise, experienced woman.
Yeah, exactly.
And is that how you're going to play it?
Exactly that. And the period is 1970. And the idea is that Despina and Alfonso had an affair during the peace and love period.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to, because he was a rich person, but not Despina. So she remained by herself and has to work. And she find work in this house of these young ladies. And but the fact, and it's very funny, is that I don't have to do the servant because normally the house is in a mess because I'm doing nothing, and they are cleaning. So it's very funny that the character, they built something very special for me because they say no, we cannot.
Do you get to make and drink the chocolate? Because that's one of the great scenes.
Well, yeah, I do it, but just to complain, and then it became something different completely. We had to do it because il cioccolato è fatto, we had to say it.
So I happen to believe a lot of people criticize the opera Così fan tutte, and I didn't know we'd be talking about it today, but I'm very happy to.
Yeah.
That it's not as good as the other Da Ponte operas by Mozart. In other words, Don Giovanni and Le Nozze di Figaro. I think it is as good, but it's different. And I think the music is magnificent.
The only problem, I think, I love Così fan tutte. I did it so many times as Fiordalicia, of course. There's the big problem for my taste, and I think for the audience too, is that in the second act is very static because everything happened in the first one. The first one is very active. The people are doing a lot of things. There's a lot of come si chiama, colpi di teatro, colpi di scena, no? But in the second is all more, thinking the people are thinking, is a little more like a Verdi opera, a little more static. And everybody told me the second act is hard. It's hard. It's too long. But I love it.
It's very psychological. When I teach psychology in opera to audiences, I use two operas, and the first one is Strauss's Electra, and people say, well, okay. But then the second one that I teach is Così fan tutte, and they're very surprised because they think of it as sort of a sex comedy, and it's really so much more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here is a sex comedy, actually.
Well, you're in Berlin.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So it, in a way, leads to the question that I really wanted to spend a lot of time talking to you about. Namely, it's no secret you are an Italian woman. And I think that you're outstanding in everything I've seen you in, but you have a very special affinity for playing Italian women. And I wrote down a few: Vitellia in La Clemenza di Tito in Ancient Rome, Suor Angelica, which is one of the great portrayals anyone will ever see. She's a Tuscan nun. Tosca, who is from Verona, but we meet her in Rome. Amelia and Simone Boccanegra, who's from Genoa. Fiordalicia, which now we're going to add Despina. Fiordalicia is from Ferrara, but we meet her in Naples.
I see.
Desdemona is from Venice. And Nedda in Pagliacci is, I think, from Calabria, but we're really not sure. She's from somewhere in the south. And these are all very strong, distinct characters. Even Desdemona is very strong, but in a different way. But they represent different parts of Italy, not only geographically, but economically, socially, culturally.
Of course.
And when I see your performances in these roles as Italian women, in part because I know Italy, but even if I didn't, I sense so much more detail and knowledge and awareness about your nation in your portrayals than I've seen in almost any other artist. I've seen, you know, all the great ladies singing these roles, and they're all wonderful. But what's very specific to you is the detail about being Italian, but also being Genoese, being Roman, being Veronese, being from Ferrara, being from Naples. Did you make this part of your career planning, or how did your characters happen this way? Nothing.
I don't know. I never thought about that actually. For me, well, the most important thing is to understand who is the character for me. And I was not thinking about the position, the geographical position, but actually I was thinking more about the social situation, which is very, very heavy in many parts. It plays a big part in these things. For example, Tosca, which is always dressed like a lady, etc., but she's not a lady actually. Mm-hmm. She's one of the people, no? Yeah. Del popolo. And so she has to be. She's an actress, and is different than Desdemona, that she is really a noble from different moment in the history, but and I think it's more interesting for me to study that part. Mm-hmm. And also the dresses and how to move in the dress is very important. Now everything is in jeans or costume da bagno,
bathing suits.
Yeah, bathing suits like here in. So it's more modern, but when you have this kind of dress, which are ancient dress, you have a kind of way to move. You cannot move like a modern person. This one I did a lot of study by myself in my house, in my room, with my big mirror, just to try to understand how I can move my body and be always right. That is a study that I did.
So are you saying that the Così fan tutte, everyone is in costumi da bagno and bathing suits?
Oh, sometimes, yeah. Well, especially me, I'm always with my legs out.
Well, because you were in Falstaff 4 years ago in Berlin, and there were bathing suits too.
Yeah, exactly. I think they like it very much. They like coats, bathing suits. It's okay, but I'm happy that I lost weight, so I can stay on stage like that without being ashamed about me. So it's good.
No problem. But so let's go very specifically. You know, because I've told you that one of my very favorite operas is Mozart's La Clemenza di Tito.
Ah, fantastic!
It's just, to me, it's as good as opera gets, and it's an opera that's not always appreciated and done properly. You have appeared in the Met's famous production by Ponell. Carol Vaness was in that, and Renata Scotto, and all kinds of Tatiana Troyanos. All through the years, there have been magnificent singers in this opera. But Vitellia is not an easy role.
Vocally, it's so funny. It's funny.
But talk about her, because I love that character. Talk about Vitellia.
Well, I had to say that when I did Vitellia at the Met, after the second rehearsal, the director who was doing the job that time, because Ponelli died many years ago.
Yeah.
Pick up. He told me, "Oh, you are doing exactly how Ponelli wanted," because it's a little difficult in English for me to explain, but Vitellia is a princess. She's there. She wants to gain power, marrying Tito, of course. And there's somebody else in the middle. So she tried, of course, not of course, actually. Mm-hmm. She has Sesto, who is in love with her, but probably she's not in love with him. and she tried to use him to kill Tito. Because she understands that, she wants to kill Tito. And she tried to use Sesto. So it's very funny because this woman, you can see at the beginning, she's very nervous because now he wants to marry this Berenice, like your mother.
Yeah.
Mother names. I love it. I always think about her when I sing that. And then finally, somebody, Agno, entered and say, "Oh, Tito sent Berenice away." So she stopped immediately. Sesto by, oddio, non riesco a dirlo in inglese, aiutami tu.
Dimmi in
cioè, ferma Sesto perché è mezz'ora che gli dice che deve andare a uccidere.
She tells Sesto to stop so that Rome won't be burned down and the assassination of Titus won't happen, Tito won't happen, so that now...
Solo perché Berenice se n'è andata, no?
Allora Berenice has been sent away to Judea.
Allora, in pratica lo ferma, dice, scusami, quello che ho detto prima lascia perdere, ferma tutto.
Never mind what I said before about burning down Rome and killing Titus.
Exactly.
Never mind.
No, never mind. We will speak later, no? And of course, all the opera is like that.
Yeah.
And at the end, when finally she sent Sesto to kill him, somebody came and say, Tito wants to marry you, but it's too late. And I think the people knows the opera, or if you don't know it, you have to see it because it's wonderful. The plot is very nice, but it's very difficult to listen it from me because my English is not enough to be clear.
Well, your English is excellent, but I can only say that when Nelson Mandela got out of prison on Robben's Island in South Africa, I had been doing some work for the State Opera of Pretoria, and they contacted me to ask for suggestions about what opera to do for Mandela getting out of prison, and they thought I was going to say Beethoven's Fidelio. But what I said instead was La Clemenza di
Tito.
Because it's an opera about political machinations, but also about truth and reconciliation. And I use those words when I addressed that with them, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu was present in the meeting, long distance, and embraces concept of truth and reconciliation from Titus, from Tito himself, and that the opera became very influential there in terms of how to rebuild South Africa with a new Black majority and a Black leadership. And Titus, the character Tito, to some people seems very boring. To me, he's a fascinating figure
because fantastic. Yes,
he can resist almost everything for the good of his people. And the character of Roma, as they say it often in the opera, Rome is a character in that opera. It's as important, I think, even more than in Tosca or in many other operas. Rome is really a character in La Clemenza di Tito because everything is about Rome.
Rome was like a person for the Romans.
Yes.
It was really something alive.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the heart of the people.
So that takes me back to what I'm saying is that while I saw many other wonderful sopranos play Vitellia, when I saw you do it at the Met, there was the added component that I felt that you understood that Rome was a person. And that's what I mean about your bringing your Italian background. But there are many Italian sopranos who've sung this, but uniquely, I always see in your characters Italian women.
Thank you. I love history, so I studied very much all this period, and so I love it.
So it leads me to another question that I have. I don't have many questions for you. The rest is conversation. But you, in recent years, certainly during the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, have become a very sought after teacher for master classes. And I have not had the pleasure yet of sitting in on one of your classes because we've been divided by the Atlantic Ocean. But Tell me about teaching, your approach to teaching. Do you like teaching?
I love teach. I love to teach. I had to thank my pianist, Zia Bachturize, because she told me you have to teach, and I was not ready. I say no, I'm not ready. I'm scared to teach, because as you know, Fred, the voice is an instrument made of skin, blood, and is very delicate. And if you do something wrong, it's done. I mean, you can ruin a voice, you can ruin the life of a person. So it's really, really dangerous. But I tried because I had so many people asking for my advice, and I said, okay, I try and I see what I can do. And at the beginning, I was so scared. At the end, when the student went away, I almost cried. I was completely like that. I was no. It's because I saw many people stop singing for because they were studying with the very wrong people. And then after maybe 6-7 months, I start to build come si dice un modus operandi.
A way of working.
A way of working, yes. And also because I asked advice to one of my biggest friends, is one of the otorinolaringoiatra, non so, OCT, I don't know, mi ricordo come si dice in inglese. Otorino.
Yes, I didn't hear the word that he is.
Otorinolaringoiatra.
Yes.
Dottore della voce.
Yes, so in other words, an otolaryngologist. Esatto. I thought his name was Otorino. That's
è otorinolaringoiatra, no, è lungo.
Okay, an otolaryngologist, an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Yeah.
Okay. E lui è molto famoso in tutto il mondo perché anche opera le corde, anche fa cambiare la voce alle persone. Per esempio, non so, le persone che hanno...
So this is someone who is operating on vocal cords.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Okay.
So they change voice, and it's very difficult to do it. You know that the voice can be ruined very... So I asked him some advice just to help the people without harm them. And this helped me very much. So now I have my way to teach, and it is working. It's working very well. The people are very happy, and I'm helping. These doctors send me some people who has maybe operation, has to to practice without harm again the voice, and I can do it because I'm doing it on the breath. I do it the Italian way, soft, without screaming, on the breath. This is my...
So we're going to keep with the music, but since you said that, you reminded me of something that I found that I want to read. I'm going to take off my friendship hat now and put on the opera expert hat.
Okay, right.
Your Suor Angelica is something, it's a magnificent creation. It is one of the great performances of anything I've ever seen. I saw Teresa Stratas do it. I saw Renata Scotto do it. They were both brilliant. And yours is brilliant too, but very different. And I don't read reviews very often, but I found a piece of a review in Opera News from when you did this. The exquisite Barbara Frittoli may not be as histrionic as Renata Scotto or Teresa Stratas, two of her predecessors in the role. Yet her sincerity and simplicity and a vocal performance of incandescent beauty had a tremendous impact. Her mezza voce effects in the early scenes caught the character's longing and remorse, in contrast to her emotional explosion in the confrontation with her aunt. In some roles, this is his opinion, Frittoli can seem reticent, even fragile, but here the voice had a forceful ring without strain in the high stretches of the finale. So that I'm not going to comment. You comment if you want about mezza voce, about strain, about how you take care of the voice for a very taxing role like Suor Angelica. It's not a long opera, but it's an incredibly hard role.
Yes, it's hard and it's scary. It's scary. It's very scary, especially because as a person, when you say as a woman and as a mother, when you sing this opera, there's a moment where your voice can crack. There's something, Puccini arrives exactly in your heart, but put a knife in your heart. And so you had to prepare yourself in the best way. And I remember singing this role with my teacher and arriving to Senza Mamma. I remember at the end, especially at the end, m'ha chiamata mio figlio, my son called me, and he was close to me and all these things. And I always start crying, always. And then he say, okay, remember the pain. And when you will be on stage, you will be fine. Remember, fake it and try to relax, because if not, you will never finish the opera. Mm-hmm. And I remember that Levine, after the first performance, he came to me, the next performance in the morning, he came to me and said, you're one of the few that can sing this opera and having the rain in your hand every time. Mm-hmm. But I studied very much to try to avoid, to use the power of the feelings, terrible feelings, to sing without being harmed by them.
Yeah.
If not, the voice just crack. I mean, because your throat closed, and it's terrible.
There's a wonderful word in Italian that doesn't quite translate to other languages very well. Emozionato, emozionata.
Sí.
What that means to me is that where someone is so overcome with emotion that they cannot necessarily continue. I don't mean as a singer, but I mean, you could be watching a dog run away, or there's a Milanese film, there's an Italian film, Umberto D by Vittorio De Sica, in which an old man is very poor, but he wants to maintain his dignity, but he cannot afford to feed his dog. So he lets the dog go, and I'm getting goosebumps as I say this. And I won't tell viewers what happens because you want to see the film. But that's where I become emozionato, when I watch Umberto D. And it's set in Milan, actually. And because something in the Italian character or tradition speaks to this. And I've seen, for example, on Italian television, when someone becomes emozionato, the audience will applaud.
Sí.
Whereas in other countries, you would be embarrassed to watch someone cry and have a breakdown, but in Italy, they applaud.
No, they applaud. You know why? Because they is actually a way to say we are with you.
Yeah.
Recollect yourself, because we understand. Is an applause of okay, we
of solidarity.
We feel it. Yes, solidarity. Yeah. It's not something, yeah, he's crying.
Well, you know, when I first moved to Italy and I lived near a church, because if you live in Italy, you live near a church. And I remember that there would be funerals at the church, that people would stand outside and applaud when the coffin, when the bada came out.
Yeah.
And I kept wondering why they were applauding.
Is a way to remember the person, because many people knows it is the sacrifice, because maybe is a young guy who died, or died for an accident, or maybe just because it was a wonderful person,
right?
And people want to say it's like to connect with the person, say we are still here,
right?
And we want to say hello for the last time.
The reason
it's our way to do it.
Well, I know, and the reason I'm underlining this is because this concept of emozionato, whether for sadness, sometimes for real joy and happiness, is something that Italians participate in. So when they go to the opera, And I'm not talking about the stereotypes of the difficult audience in Milan or Parma. I'm talking about the fact that they are very moved by what they see, so that they know that Suor Angelica will not have a good end for her, probably. And they become deeply emotionally attached, whereas other operas, other countries don't. They become embarrassed. And this leads me very specifically to an opera that I absolutely adore. You know this, Simone Boccanegra is one of my very favorite operas of all. Clemenza di Tito, Simone Boccanegra. It happens that many of the operas that I most love, you sing in those roles. I've seen you in them. And Simone Boccanegra has a story that I can tell the story. I know what it's about. It's a little complex, but not very. It's about a father and a daughter, and about how politics and rivalries in Genoa have interfered with the father's relationship with the daughter, but then later on, they find a certain kind of peace and connection. And it's very, very beautiful. And when I read reviews of it from England, from the United States, when it premiered a long time ago, the critics would be very negative about the emotions of the story. Not the music, they respected the music, but the emotions of the story, that it was not comprehensible. To me, it's one of the most deeply felt of all the operas by anyone. And would you talk about Emilia and how you play her, and about, I know you've sung this role with many great Boccanegras, because I've seen you, baritones. Talk about this opera, because it doesn't get enough appreciation.
Well, Simone Boccanegra is a very different opera. You know that there's many versions. I also sang many years ago the first version, which is much more difficult. There's not the council scene that is not there. There's many differences. But the most important thing is to think that Simone Boccanegra had a girl, a child with this woman. This woman died when giving birth.
In childbirth, yes.
In childbirth. And she was the daughter of his enemy, actually. Yes. So Simone Boccanegra became the doge, the chief of this big
Genoa.
Genova, si chiama una società marinara. And then she met again. She lost this girl because this girl was sent to Pisa, and then the woman who was helping this little child died, and she remained alone, and she disappeared. This is already, for an Italian, something that you will cry forever.
Yeah.
Because to losing a child also like this is unbelievable. But anyway, in that period, it was easy because there was a lot of also war and battle and all these things. So it was quite easy. And at the end, they find themselves again for a very particularly things, because she came back in the house where her mother died, actually.
Yeah.
So, and it's very intense, this moment, the fact that they recognize themselves thanks to a brooch or something, a necklace. They have this paint miniature of this of the mother of, non mi ricordo neanche come si chiama il carattere.
Maria.
Okay. Di Maria, è vero, of Maria. And it's wonderful. And then there's all the politics coming together. She loves a man, of course, is against the Doge, blah, blah, blah.
And he's a tenor.
And he's a tenor, my God. I can imagine, I cannot take home a tenor too. I think my mother will send me outside. Go away from this house. Don't want to see you anymore. No, but it's very important, this opera, because it is a moment also for Verdi of changing, musically changing.
Mhm.
It was a little, he looked for something different. And you can find pieces of music, especially the poison scene
Yeah.
of him is so modern. It's something like of only 50 years ago. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it's one of my favorite too. And I have to say, I sang it with many great baritons. I just want, by Leonucci, I sang it with him 1,000 of times. But I think the one who I have more in my heart is Dmitri Kvorostovsky.
Rostovsky, yeah.
Yeah, we did it many times, also in many parts of the world together, and I think was an amazing role for him. And we find ourselves so good in this.
He had very handsome man, of course, died much too soon. He had white hair as a young man. So it's interesting that this handsome man with the white hair, the full head of white hair, could play your father and be believable because of the hair. He didn't wear a wig usually. And he was a Russian, he was from Siberia, actually, but had a very strong feeling for Verdi and Verdi's music and character. Would you talk about him and Verdi specifically?
I think that Dima born to sing Verdi. He born for that. He knew it as it was in Italian. He spoke a fluent Italian, actually. He spoke very well. And well, I just want to tell you something very small about the last period, the last things he did at the Met. He did Trovatore, you know.
Yes.
It was already the period that he was not really fine. And I remember he phoned me once. He was studying to go there, but he was already having this problem. And he was almost crying, say, I cannot sing. I don't know how to do it. And we start talking about Verdi, about the simplicity of the sentiment. And I say, listen, don't fight Verdi. Listen to music and think about him and sing. That's it. Just it's something simple. You have it. You don't have to build something different. You are trying to think too much because you have this problem. So don't think and just sing. And I remember after an hour, he called me back and he said, thank God I found again everything, because he has it.
Yeah.
You know, Verdi was within. It's like he has biological Italian. I always say to him, you are like my brother. No?
Yeah.
Because he was really a lot Italian as a person. I can recognize some things in him. And so he has a knowledge about how to do the things. So in that case, I can see in him what you see in me, but I'm Italian, is normal.
Yeah.
But what an Italian can see in a guy is coming from Siberia.
I agree with you. I knew him, not as well as you did, but I certainly knew him and worked with him. And my family background is Russian and Ukrainian, so we're a bit of a mix. And it sounds like I'm dropping names. I'm not, but I once worked with Marcello Mastroianni, and Mastroianni worked in Russia. And he said to me that compared to the Russians, the Italians are cold-hearted, that the Russians are very deeply emotional and emozionati and so on. And they are, at least the ones I've known. And there's a very particular emotional and spiritual connections between the people of Russia, Ukraine, and so on, and Italians.
Yeah, I think so.
And many of them moved to Italy. And right now, with our Ukraine war happening, you may have seen the video, if not, people can find it online, of 2 Ukrainian children arriving in Naples, and they were given little backpacks, and they arrived at the school, the Scuola Elementare in Naples, and all the children applauded these 2 little Ukrainian children. It's a very particular thing. And I think that Dmitri Dima understood the heart aspect, the spiritual aspect of Italy, and connected to it as a Russian. And, you know, it makes me, it's obvious to say, but we have to say it anyway, that we can meet on more peaceful places than a battlefield. We can meet at a theater, we can meet at a school, we can meet in a religious institution if you want, but you don't have to find differences, we have to find commonality. And certainly opera is a place for that. And Simone Boccanegra specifically, I also saw you in Don Carlo with him, as he was Rodrigo and you were Elisabetta di Valois. So now I'm going to say something to you. I don't know if you know this. Elisabetta is my favorite Verdi character. And not many people say that.
Oh, it's one of my favorite too.
But I mean, not just for sopranos, I mean, all Verdi characters.
All Verdi.
So there's Falstaff, there's Simone Boccanegra. Verdi wrote brilliant characters. He was a great dramatist. But my very favorite is Elisabetta di Valois, because I was teaching Don Carlo the other day to an audience here in New York. And in my perspective, yes, the opera is called Don Carlo, but he meets Elizabeth in the very first scene, and they are supposed to be married, and then news comes that King Philip II will marry her instead to bring peace to Spain and France. And Carlo is devastated. Elizabeth, in a different way, is devastated. And then the opera moves forward. It expands in different directions. The church comes in at the Spanish court and so on. And Elizabeth seems to be moved to the side, except for one scene where her lady-in-waiting is sent away. But then when the opera concludes, it is Elizabeth who takes center stage.
Yes.
For Tu che le vanità, the aria that basically is the summation of everything that happened in the previous 4.5 hours.
Yes.
And she, in most productions, just stands on the stage. There's not a lot of movement. And yet, when that aria is done beautifully, as you have done it at Montserrat Caballé, I can name Mirella Freni, I can name many. When it's done as it should be, it is the most transcendent experience that I can think of in Verdi operas. And because suddenly we realize that the whole opera, though it's called Don Carlo, is really her vision.
I see.
And her experience, even though she has been moved to the side because Verdi saved her and the librettist saved her for the end. And she's the one who explains everything, who has sacrificed so much for France. And do you know who the real Elizabeth de Valois' mother was?
I don't remember now.
She was Italian, Catherine de Medici.
Caterina di Medici.
Which means that Elizabeth de Valois is another one of your Italian characters.
half and half.
Half Italian. Talk to me a bit about Elizabeth and the way you play her, and it's extraordinary.
I love Don Carlo. You know, there's 7 versions of Don Carlos. Then Don Carlo, Don Carlos, and that's in French, that's in Italian, there's one less act, only 4 acts, 5 acts. I actually never accepted to sing it in 4 acts because I think it's more important to have the prologue. Yes. With the first meeting between him and her, Don Carlo and Elisabetta, because it explains everything and the people can understand better the situation, the changing of the great change of the status of Elisabetta, and why everything is going to be so wrong for him, and how much he suffered, how much she is suffering.
Yeah.
And I think also the production we did at the Met, it was amazing. I think I love it so much. And I just did it before the COVID in Greece. And I love it. I love it very much. Is really for me another of my favorite role with Desdemona, maybe. and Suor Angelica, of course, and maybe Nozze di Figaro,
Mhm.
Contessa is my favorite operas. But for Verdi till now, I think that maybe also Elisabetta is one of my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that they canceled I supposed to debut Ballo in Maschera
Mm.
this year, but they canceled everything for the
Oh,
COVID.
yeah.
So I'm very sorry, but I think that one is also fantastic. And
Amelia, in other words.
Amelia,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well, I'll get to Amelia in a moment since you brought her up, but I want to ask you another question that's related between Elizabeth and Amelia. The aria Tu che le vanità conoscesti del mondo in the last act of Don Carlo is very long. It's about 10 minutes, even a little longer. It is a wonderful aria. Wagner wishes he could have written something so good.
I think so. Oops, I cannot say I'm in Berlin.
No, I know, but I always refer to that aria as the Liebestod of Verdi. In other words, it's a summation of everything, and then it's a transcendence, the way in Tristan and Isolde. And I love Wagner operas, don't get me wrong. I really do.
No, me too.
I've worked in Wagner productions a lot. I love it. But this is like the Liebestod. But my question is, if you as a teacher were going to teach a young soprano or not so young soprano,
exactly,
how to do this and how to sustain it vocally, dramatically, because there are many pieces inside that big aria. She's telling a story about Carlo V, Charles V, who's in the tomb behind you. She talks about France. She talks about Spain. She talks about all kinds of things in reviewing everything that has happened to her in her life.
Yes.
That's not the same as non so più cosa son cosa faccio.
No.
Or in Uomini and Soldati, which are very small pieces. Talk about creating an aria that has such a huge dramatic arc.
Okay, what I normally say to the students when you have to learn an aria, it is that an aria is like building a house. So you have to start from below and go up. And the first things that you really have to know is the text and understand the feelings of this woman. First of all, in this aria, you have to understand that she is in a tomb. No, in this famous place. I don't know if somebody of your audience went close to Madrid to see this fantastic palace. Well, it's very scary palace. If you look it from outside, it's like a black block of marble. And L'Escurial, exactly. And here that you enter in this palace and it all is cold because the walls are 2 meters, 3 meters, so outside there's 45 degrees Celsius and inside there's 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then and all is very simple. There's not many things. And then you go down in the tombs and all it became gold. It's amazing. Is the idea in that period when they built this Filippo II palace, the idea of the life and the dead. So she is there. She is there in this magnificent place, and she's waiting for his love. So first of all, the situation, Carlo. First of all, is the situation you have to consider, and she's going to pray on the tomb of Carlo V.
The grandfather of Don Carlo.
The grandfather of Carlo.
Yeah.
And it's only that you have to sing it in a special way. Mm-hmm. Because many people just, they scream, and sometimes when I do it, they say, but I think maybe you can do it a little bit. No, because it's a prayer. and he's dead.
Yeah.
I mean, God hear you, and somebody who is died. If you are religious, they will listening to you also if you're not screaming. No, you don't need to do it, and especially at the beginning, there's no music.
Yeah.
There's no music at all. So
Mhm.
you have to pray in that moment. And then after, there's subito è pianissimo. Ancora ti piano, and he says, pianissimo, pianissimo, pianissimo. So you see, it depends what you want to see in this character. But she's just only praying. And at the end, she is crying. That's
Yeah.
it. But she is not to, she don't want to cut the cords down.
Mhm.
And this is the most important things. And when she is suffering so much, then for a moment, immediately she thinks of something nice. And I always explain, when you are suffering very much, the first thing that you do is to remember the good things.
Mhm.
Francia, nobile suol, si cara ai miei Verdani, eccetera. She try to think of something easy, not to soothe this
Yeah.
pain she feels. And it's just, this is the way I'm building this aria. Changing the color of the voice every time she's changing her mind. Not changing her mind as you say, but changing, something else comes in her mind.
A
And
new
it's the
thought.
most a new thought. So a new color, and this is the transcendent things.
Mhm.
That she became some, she's there, but it's like she's in many places in this area.
Yeah.
And it is wonderful. I understand, because I always sing it in many concerts also with the
Mhm.
orchestra, because it's one of my favorites at all. And this
And
is
there's a
the way I
line
teach it.
somewhere in questa eternità.
Ah, sì, adesso non mi
And
ricordo esattamente. Sì.
the way Verdi wrote that, and the way you and a few other people, especially Frady, sang it, in questa eternità, those T's there that made eternity seem like really eternity, and
Sì.
not a good eternity, but
No.
just endless pain and suffering
And
is
also la pace della vela, the peace of
yes,
the tomb
right.
is something really,
Yes.
whoa. And it's so low for the voice in that moment for the soprano, but it's
And then the
amazing.
music starts again, and she, after that, La Pace
Whoa,
de
whoa,
la
whoa.
Vela.
Yeah. Sì.
It's phenomenal. That's all I can say.
Nice.
By the way, I want listeners to go to idagio.com and enter Barbara Frittoli, and you will find a lot of performances by Barbara Frittoli, and you will understand what I have appreciated first as an opera expert, let's call me that, and then as a friend. So that although I'm speaking with my friend today, we're talking about great, great operatic performance and work. So, amica mia, I have another question for you.
Come on.
You were saying that, shoot, Spada. You were saying that the Countess Almaviva in Mozart is, from Le Nozze di Figaro, one of your favorite roles. I have seen you do that. I have also seen you many, 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 many times in different countries in productions of Don Giovanni. Now, the thing about Don Giovanni is that there are two roles that you have sung and that numerous sopranos have sung, Renee Fleming, Carol Vaness, and so forth, Elvira and Anna. And I looked it up. You were in 3 different productions at the Metropolitan Opera. The Franco Zeffirelli production, the Martha Keller production, and the Michael Grandage production. I was involved with Zeffirelli professionally when he did that production. I'm a close friend of Martha Keller when she worked on her production, and I spoke with her a lot about ideas for that production. I don't know Michael Grandage, but these were 3 very, very different productions. And in some you played Anna, and some you played Elvira. I think it's the hardest opera of all to stage. I think that you need many great performers who fit into sort of a puzzle, like a Rubik's Cube, for it to work. And if one artist is just not quite right for the role, it throws off the balance for the whole production. The cast,
Yes,
let's say, not the production.
Yeah.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you said to me once that Anna is okay, but you prefer Elvira. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
Why?
Well, I had to be honest. Musically, I prefer Anna than Anna. I think is very charming. But you know, I start singing Don Giovanni as Elvira. My beginning was as Elvira, and it was very funny, difficult because all Mozart. I mean, it's not so easy. But you know, you can be a lot of. You can explain a lot with your body, with your acting, doing Elvira. But many people ask me, could you please try to sing? Okay, I tried. And I said in my mind, in my soprano mind, so it means a very small mind like this. I say, wow, oh, finally, I will show them what to do on stage with Anna. And then I realized when I start singing that when you sing Anna, you cannot move. You became like a salt statue because
like
it's so
father.
difficult.
Like her father, yeah.
It's so difficult to sing it. It's so dangerous. Okay, I did only 2 production as Anne, 3 production as Anne. And then I say, okay, that's it. I will sing Elvira forever. That's it. Very
but
difficult.
With Anna, well, I mean, I've lived with this opera for my whole life, and I've studied it, and I keep studying it, and it's like Hamlet. There are certain things that you can study your whole life and only begin to understand. And it's a very complex opera because, number one, the title character, Don Giovanni, is not really a hero. He's an anti-hero.
Exactly.
And much like the opera Don Carlo, where everybody talks about Carlo, even if we don't see him, in Don Giovanni, everybody talks about Giovanni, even if we don't see him, because he's kind of like the sun and everything rotates around the sun. And so that if someone were to play Anna as being in love with Giovanni or having a physical attraction to Giovanni, I've seen it. I'm not defending that, but I've seen it. As opposed to someone who finds him absolutely disgusting, the whole experience is different. Elvira can be played as a comic character or, to me, a very sad, pathetic character. Mozart rewrote an aria for her after the original production. But I always point out about Elvira, she's the one who comes back to warn Giovanni that he's threatened with death from the commendatore. And she comes to try to save him. I'm of the opinion that she and he have slept together more than once.
See,
whereas
I think so too.
Most of the people he claims to have slept with, he slept with once. So therefore, there is some kind of emotional connection between them, even though he doesn't want to admit that.
You know what I always think about Elvira? This is only my of course, my thought. First of all, I think she's not noble.
Okay.
First of all. And I explain you why. And also after I said what I think, then I explain why. Second, I think she's not young. Because I don't think it's noble because she is going by herself with a maiden around Spain to try to find Don Giovanni. And not only not a noble young girl can in that period can just go around like that searching for a man. but also, especially not if she was young. So, or she's noble and she's old, I mean, like a widow.
Mhm.
And Don Giovanni, it was the last chance of her life to get a life. In fact, at the end, she said, "Okay, I will go. I will go in a by the church. I will
Mhm.
stay there with my sisters, and I will become a nun, because there's no other
Option.
situation that
Yeah.
option for her." And this is so for me. It was always difficult when they dress me like a wonderful, nice girl, and I say, "My God, could you please put me something black, something a little more?" Just because I was not very much in my, how do you say, comfortable
Mhm.
in
Comfortable,
that
yeah. Yeah.
comfortable in that dress. But they nobody think about me, so maybe I'm wrong. But this is my idea. I think this is the only possibility that a girl in that period goes away from house just with one maiden that nobody sees. In met the last production, I had a maiden actually, and I
Yep.
was so happy. Finally,
Yep.
yeah. And
So is
this
it,
is
I'm trying to remember, is it the maid of Elvira who Giovanni sings De Vieni
yes,
alla
of course,
Finestra?
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
So he's trying to seduce the maid of Don Elvira,
Yes,
which could make Elvira more jealous and angry.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Vedesti tu la cameriera di Donna Elvira.
Yeah. and,
Eh,
it, and in the production I saw at La Scala a few years ago, the maid was naked. She was nude.
oh my God, don't tell me that.
Yeah.
And the problem, not because she was naked, I don't care, but the problem that Giovanni and this naked girl was exactly sitting in front of the maestro. We cannot see anything. So it was the same, maestro, please move, do something, do like this, because we it's so difficult. My God, they say, "Oh, we are not together, maestro. We cannot see you." But I say, but no problem, because nobody will listen to us, because everybody they were looking up for us. So no problem.
So here's a question I've never asked an artist about Don Elvira, but I think it's an important question. I think that the acting required for that role is very complex. And I'm going to only point out a specific scene, but you can talk about any of the acting. I think one of the hardest jobs in all of opera is Elvira acting with Leporello when he sings Maramina il catalogo è questo. In other words, he is going down a long list of all the conquests in Spain and Turkey and Germany and so on that Don Giovanni has had. And Elvira, who has feelings for Giovanni, has slept with Giovanni, and therefore is probably one of the names in this catalog.
Oh, see.
How, as an actress, does a soprano respond to that? I know that some of it is the stage director, but I think that it's early in the opera that we learn so much about Elvira through her reaction. Now, most people focus on the Leporello, I admit, but I focus on the Elvira also because that sets the tone for the rest of the opera.
Absolutely. And I have to say that I always have all the people who did Leporello and I was in the moment I was singing Elvira, they always thank me because I had the right reaction when they were saying something, because some Elvira doesn't do so much.
Right.
But first of all, I think because you had to be careful to don't store, the attention too much, because a colleague is singing. Yeah. But in the same way, this aria is actually all about her. Because and at the end they say in Italia, they say 140, and then it's 1,300
in Spain.
In Spain, and she's from Spain.
In Spagna.
Sono già 1.300. Come on, it's terrible because you say, "Oh my God!" Not a few 1.300. It's terrible. It's a journey. It's a journey in the truth, for discovering the truth about this man that she loves so much and she wanted back.
I loved it when you did it with Samuel Ramey.
Mamma mia. When he was Leporello.
He was Leporello, because we know him for Don Giovanni.
Oh, don't tell
When
me.
he was Leporello and you were Elvira, talk about that, please.
Oh, listen. Well, listen. I think as all the soprano of the world, we were all in love with Sam, because on stage he was marvelous. The voice, okay, it's not necessary for me to say something about his voice, because it was amazing. But the character on stage, they were so precise, so elegant every time. And when we sang together, the last time I did Don Giovanni at the Met, and he was Leporello. Nothing, I mean, the Don Giovanni was fantastic. I have nothing to say. But every time I was looking at him, and then at the end, I told him, I say, my God, it's so difficult to have somebody else doing Don Giovanni while you are on the same stage and doing Leporello. It's so difficult. And he was, oh, thank you, Barbara. I said, no, listen, because when he's singing, I looking at you and I say, oh my God, why he's not singing? Because it's something that really just take your heart out of your chest. Mm-hmm. Like, and I remember the last performance, Don Giovanni died, and Leporello said, I go back and to try to find somebody. Say, I will be a nun. And he came to me, and in a moment he act like Don Giovanni. He came, take my hand, and kiss my hand, and I was, oh my God! Just 3 movement. It's like the Don Giovanni reborn in Leporello, and it was also amazing, because probably Leporello wants it to be like Don Giovanni at the end.
That's also another way that a director and the performers need to make decisions and interpret, because if you read the text, you could say that Leporello is repelled in some ways by Giovanni, but admires Giovanni.
Absolutely.
And when they get to exchange clothing in the second act, and he, for a few minutes, gets to be Giovanni.
Of course.
He likes it. I think he likes it.
Yes, I think so too.
So there's a lot more I want to talk to you about, but I'm going to mind our time. Is there something among your work, among your repertory, that I didn't bring up that you would like to talk about?
No, it's okay. No. You are the no. I follow you.
Well, I found a quotation. I don't read reviews often of singers, but this was also the same person Opera News wrote about your first production of Don Giovanni, where Dmitri Vorostovsky was Don Giovanni, and Elvira was the fantastic Harold Vaness. And it was a wonderful cast. And the critic wrote, the true standout was Barbara Frittoli as the sovereign Donna Anna. The soprano managed to do just about everything right. Her Orsai l'onore rang out resplendently with no sign of strain. She floated the lyrical line of Non mi dir with ideal elasticity and interpolated a gleaming vocal arc leading into the reprise. She was a reliable and brilliant presence in ensembles. So the first part you can take as a compliment, but I want to go to the last line. She was a reliable and brilliant presence in the ensembles. Talk about, in Don Giovanni, but just in opera in general, because Verdi has a lot of ensembles, insieme, where it's not just you as a solo artist, but it's vocally interacting. In Le Nozze di Figaro, there's a lot of this, but dramatic and vocally, and about making music with other people on the stage. Talk about that.
I was taught by Riccardo Muti about that, because we, as a soloist, sometimes, there's a little like a battle, because somebody wants that his or her line is the most important. They try to sing all forte. But at the end, if you respect what is written in the part and you respect harmonics, the harmonics, is amazing to sing together, because like an orchestra, we can do a lot of nice things. And at the end, if you lead, you lead.
Mhm.
But if you don't, you have to disappear. And this it shows a lot of respect of the spartito, the score of the composer and of your colleagues.
Mhm.
And because we are really doing music together. This is the magic of the music that put all the people together and everything, also in the orchestra. Now there's a lot of respect, and you have to have respect for for all the people. And in Verdi, there's many more things. In Mozart, there's almost nothing. I mean, like I did also Mitridate Re di Ponto. I was
Mhm.
Sifare, and there's only one concertato at the end, and it's only 30 seconds.
Mhm.
This is the insieme ensemble of Mitridate. 30 seconds, that's it. Then aria recitativo, one duet, only one, and then aria recitativo, aria recitativo. So it's also nice because he doesn't use the core very much, but for example, in Clemenza di Tito, there's a lot of chorus,
Mhm.
and also in Idomeneo, but Nozze di Figaro and Don Giovanni, there's just a few things. It's
Yeah.
a very, very easy.
That's true.
But
I never really thought about it that way, that his opera seria has a lot more chorus than
sì,
the Da
sì,
Ponte comedies. That's probably because of Da Ponte writing the libretto.
probably.
So Mitridate Re di Ponto was written by Mozart when he was 14,
Sì,
and it had its premiere in Milano, your
sì.
hometown. And my guest last week was Madeleine Renee, who lives, she's an American, but she lives in Milano. And we spoke at great length about Milano. But I think one thing a lot of people don't know is that La Scala did not always exist. It opened in 1778. So when Mozart did Mitridate in 1770, there was no La Scala. And opera actually existed in Milan before La Scala. And Mozart was a very young man. He was traveling in Italy with his father. I know the date. It's in my head, December 24th, 1769.
You're
They did their
incredible.
first performance. It was in Rovereto in
Probably.
Trentino, in the Trentino area of Italy. And the wine there is Marzemino. And on that night, Mozart tasted Marzemino for the first time. And many years later, when he was working with Da Ponte, and Don Giovanni in Spain is drinking not a Spanish wine,
Zemino.
he's drinking Marzemino Eccellente Vino. And when you see the projected titles, at least in America, it often says, this is good wine, which completely ruins the cultural reference. Mozart at 13 and 14, on his extended trip to Mantova, to Bologna, where he spent a lot of time, to Rome, to Florence, to Naples, this is where he absorbed the Italian style. And his first expression of it was Mitridate Re di Ponto. And I mention this because a number of years ago, James Levine, unfortunately, is no longer with us. I said to him, I asked him, which opera by any composer that has not been done at the Met do you think we should do? Now, that's a general question. And he looked at me, he called me Freddie, and he said, Freddie, you know the answer. So you and I are going to say it together after three. 1, 2, 3. We both said Mitridate Re di Ponte. And he regretted that he never got to conduct it. He said, but it would take so much work to instill that into the chorus, into the company, into the artist, into the orchestra, that he felt there was not enough time to make that happen. It's a wonderful work.
It's wonderful. It's very long.
Yes.
It's one of the longest. I think maybe I'm wrong, but it's more than 40 arias.
Yeah.
More than 40.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 43, something like that. Only one duet. and one ensemble of 30 seconds. So it's a little the Wagner style in Mozart, I think. The journey is a very long journey. It's very interesting. It's very interesting.
I love it. I love listening to it, but I mean, it's grammatically a little hard to stage, but I do love to listen. I mean, it's early Mozart. We can see in that. It's like listening to early Verdi, that we see where we're going with Verdi. We see where we're going with Mozart, or Rienzi with Wagner, that we can see how Wagner wrote Rienzi in 6 hours, but he finally got, when he wrote 6-hour operas like Parsifal and Götterdämmerung, they were much better 6-hour operas, but Rienzi to me is very valid, molto valido. You said something a moment ago that I think is an important comment that I never really thought about Riccardo Muti, that I think many people associate him correctly with his work in Mozart and in Verdi. People associate you primarily, I would say, with your work in Mozart and Verdi, although you've sung beautifully other composers, most famously Suor Angelica by Puccini, and Mimi and other Puccini roles. But Liu was wonderful. I never heard your Tosca. I know you did it, but I never heard it.
Just once.
In Verbier, right?
Yeah.
Verbier, yeah. So I was not in Verbier that year. So, but is there something about Riccardo Muti's approach? Is there something about your approach that Mozart and Verdi received this kind of attention in terms of making them work? Of course, they're geniuses. We don't have to discuss that. But in terms of how to do Mozart and Verdi, Muti has dedicated his life to that, and you have done a great deal of Mozart and Verdi.
Yes. Well, I tell you what I always thought. If you sing well Mozart, you will sing Verdi fantastically, because they don't write in the same way, but they put on music the same feelings in the same way. Very honest feelings, also complex, but so easy to do it. I always say it seems wrong, but for me is right. Mozart is in the Barocco period, but for me is like Verismo, because when you sing Mozart, you have to sing with your voice, with your real voice. You cannot do something to change color. You talk, and the same is in Verdi. Verdi is all colors, but colors of the feelings. And the same is Mozart. It's the same things. So this is why Mozart and Verdi goes together so well. And
thank you for
I always but it's true.
That's a wonderful. I will quote you when I teach that. I promise I will teach that now, but I'll say I learned it from you. I always give credit where credit is due. But that's a really wonderful explanation of something I've been trying to figure out. So grazie for that.
No, è una cosa, tu ne dici miliardi. Stupende, bellissime.
I do have to, il faut partir hélas, as they say in French, in a couple of moments. But since you mentioned that you have prepared the Amelia from Ballo and Mascara, and I hope that you will sing her soon, that's yet again a very difficult role in terms of the drama. I know you can do it vocally, but in terms of the decisions dramatically, that she too has a relationship with a child that she has to abandon, like Suor Angelica. She too loves a man, as Elizabeth does in Don Carlo, but she does not act on it. She is faithful to her husband, whatever her feelings are about her husband. She's a noble character in terms of her personality, but she's a victim of her, I think, a victim of her time and her circumstance. How did you approach developing this character?
Well, I cannot, I didn't do it.
Okay. But on the
Because
page.
yeah, on the page, for me, the most important thing is to start, I mean, with the story, with the plot, or the situation. I think is very complex, especially Lori do Campo, no, the moment that she goes to take this herb.
Yes.
That the witch told her to drink because she will lose the love with this man and blah blah
That's
blah.
also, that's like Suor Angelica. Suor Angelica.
Yeah, exactly. That's also vero. It's also in this place where a lot of people died. So thief and killers and assassins and all these things. So it's very gothic. It's a little bit.
It is
very
Gothic,
dark. It's very dark as an opera, and I love these kind of things. I really love it when they all these things acting, and that's the magic of this witch. I think it's very interesting. I don't know. I had to do it on stage to be sure to do the right things and to see if my ideas can be connected exactly. But as if I don't do it on stage, I cannot tell you very much.
Well, I look forward to it, but no costume da bagno, no bathing suit.
No, please, my God.
You're in Sweden, it's too cold.
Please, it's so difficult for us. I understand. I mean, it's not bad this production. I have to say I have a lot of fun, and so La Figlia dei Fiori, peace and love, and all these things. It's funny. It's funny. But I miss so much the nice costume I used to wear. Yeah. And now I see, but probably because also there's not so much money for the opera. They want to cut a lot of the budgets are cut very much. Yes, but it's a pity because I don't think the people want to see our time on stage too. I think going to the opera is also to enter in another world, in another moment, just to really to dream about something, like to be in a dream or in a fairy tale, something that brings you away from this moment, which is awful. Not mentioning for the war, but also for other things, for everybody. For the social situation, the money. There's a lot of people who lost everything. And I think going to the opera and see, also the 1970 was not so nice, for the dresses and all these things. So I think, no, please, we want to, the people need to dream at the opera. This is our job. This is our job.
And you do it beautifully. I say
but they are, just
they're stripping it away.
Everything.
I know.
It's terrible.
When I teach opera, I teach people to dream and to connect to their dreams. Not my dreams, never my dreams, their dreams.
Their dreams.
Their emotions, their desire to essere emozionato, to become connected to the emotions, which is something that you do beautifully as an artist, and you make it happen for us in the audience. And I mean that. Ti voglio bene, as the Italians say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara Frittoli. And next week, I have another wonderful guest. I never announce them because you never know, but I have a really wonderful guest who is not a singer.
Okay.
But we still like him. Grazie, Barbara. Buon lavoro.
Grazie a te. Un bacione.
I will see you soon.
A presto. Speriamo.
Ciao. Okay. Johan.